This map kind of shows you what this is about. Notice that the federal areas are in red. Look at the east of the Rockies. It's about 4.3% of that landmass total is under direct federal control. Now look at the western states, all the red there. That's almost 50% of our landmass out here. Why that unequal protection of the law, the guarantees of the states being able to govern their own? Now if you look at Nevada right there, which is of course where we are right now, almost 85% of Nevada is under federal jurisdiction. Something wrong out here, folks. Something real wrong. This is really what this is about. Okay, I want to introduce Mr. Norm Davis here. He's an expert on this entire land problem that we're witnessing and why this particular thing here on the Bundy Ranch is the linchpin for the West. So with that, Mr. Davis, thanks for explaining this. I think you're going to put it in a nutshell for us so even those who aren't, lawyers or involved in this at all can understand it. So you've got the floor.
So what's the solution big enough? What's the solution big enough for the problem that we have? And what is the problem? The problem is that when each state was brought into the Union, there was an establishment clause that was created for each state. If you look at the map, in the East, in the 1800s, some wise legislators decided that their states needed to have the control of their federal lands. All we're asking for in the West is exactly the same rights, and we need our friends in the East to support us to do that. That's the solution big enough. That's the nutshell of what really our challenge is for today, is getting our rights that have already been done before. It's a solution big enough.
And you said that there are some legislators who are working on this.
Yes, Representative Mike Noel and Ken Ivory out of the state of Utah are working with a coalition of states in the West, attempting to get them to join us and support us in Utah and Nevada, and then moving to our friends in the East.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And I'm gonna make you go somewhere where we thought we shouldn't, but just real quick. Why is it that we should stand against the laws that have been put into place, for instance, the 1993 Clinton thing?
Well, that's a great question. So in 1992, George Bush Sr., when he was at the Rio Accords, said that we will put in place, we will exceed the expectations of this non-binding agreement that was created by the United Nations. And that later became the Environmental Protection Agency's derivatives and all the documents that they created. Well, the body of evidence is so overwhelming that the federal government for many, many, many years has been creating a body of non-binding agreements. But when you make them agency policy, those non-binding agreements literally become the documents that bind us and cause us to be slaves versus free men and women.
Mr. Davis, I want to come into the frame with you here because I think I want to thank you for doing that.
My pleasure.
We're brothers in arms out here, and a lot of good people, as you can see. Compare this man with the people that are sitting on the seats of power in the District of Columbia.
And you have to do it for your own states.
That's right. Thanks again.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davis has another aspect of this he'd like to bring up, so let's see what he has to say.
So what's the only solution big enough to this challenge? In Utah, there are two legislators that are working on something called the American Lands Council. Back in the early 1800s, the eastern states got together and decided that they wanted to be able to manage their private lands as the establishment clauses were created when we became states. Every state was given the authority to manage their own public lands. And so in the East, in the 1800s, those legislators all got together, and you can see in this map that they managed somewhere between 3 and 9% of the public lands. Here in the West, as each of the states failed to secure their rights, and then the BLM was established, all of these lands have then become federal lands to manage, but yet they're still public lands. So the American Lands Council out of the state of Utah is going around to all the various states. Representative Ken Ivory and Representative Mike Noel are working together with each of these states, trying to get a coalition So then we can return to our friends in the East and say, we want the same privileges that you have in the East. We demand them in the West. It's been done before. It's the only solution big enough to the federal encroachment of our lands. Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate that, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
But
This was state and county land. All we gotta do is go to our county commissioners. We gotta make we holler a little, and then they change that land the way it needs to be. That's putting the power in the people's hands. Is that why?